Good morning. I am sitting in front of a window and it's really rainy out. So for some reason my skin looks orange, but I swear I haven't done anything interesting enough to have a tan. We're going to talk about anxiety today. We're going to talk about how to build an anxiety-free life. And I just want to remind you of who I am. I am Dr. Tara Egan. My training originally is as a school psychologist, and then I got additional training as a mental health clinician. I own a solo practice, a private practice here in Charlotte called Charlotte Parent Coaching. And then I also own Dr. Tara Egan LLC, where you can access my podcast, my books, some of my webinars, things like that. So I have written a couple parenting books that can be found on Amazon. I really enjoy the public speaking aspect of my job, which is one of the reasons why I do this presentation every week. And also you can find me on my podcast, which I co-host with my teenage daughter, called One Day You'll Thank Me. And that has new episodes every Wednesday. Let's see, I'm trying to think what we're going to talk about this week. We interviewed a student athlete named Miles, and he is a former baseball player for Hofstra University. And he talks about the demands of balancing his life on the field as an athlete on the team, as well as the challenges of managing the academic side of college. So super nice guy, really helpful information. So if you're a parent out there who has an athlete who is considering playing in college, getting his input and recommendations, I think would be really helpful. So tune in Wednesday, and you can find us on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on. So today we're going to start by just talking in a general way about what anxiety is. There is sort of a formalized definition in the DSM, which is what clinicians use to determine what diagnoses are. But for our purposes, we're just going to talk about it in a really relatable way, which is it's persistent, uncontrollable worry. It often takes the form of dread or apprehension, and it can be triggered by a stressful event, or it can be something that's more brain-based. And it could be a result of having a genetic history of depression, like in your family. You could have a chemical imbalance, where you have inappropriate levels of dopamine or serotonin. And oftentimes when somebody has anxiety that stems from a more physiological perspective or aspect, we can spend a lot of our time and energy looking for stress points. You'd be like, I feel so keyed up, I feel so anxious. Let me kind of search in my life to find the thing that's probably causing me an anxiety. Now, we live in a world with COVID right now, so we all have that chronic stressor. But my point in writing this detail is that sometimes if anxiety is more physiologically based, it's not the result of a specific stressor. So people can end up feeling really helpless if they're like, why am I having a panic attack? I was just randomly, in my bedroom reading a book and I had a panic attack. Like, how could that have happened? But it's really important to understand that sometimes anxiety doesn't have this discernible trigger. I have this little diagram. It's very primitive, I realize, that talks about anxiety in a general sense. The truth is, we all need to have a bit of anxiety. We need to have just enough anxiety to keep us motivated, keep us safe, keep us aware of our surroundings, motivate us to concentrate and follow through with things, motivate us to notice if somebody is struggling with something or we need to exhibit kindness, whatever it is. And so that sweet spot of anxiety is, what this diagram shows is that's the amount of anxiety that in order to be a functional, engaged person in your world, you want to have that sprinkling of anxiety to keep you on track. If your anxiety is too low, it can look like lethargy or apathy. So you might underperform, you might not study hard enough for that test. You might not pay attention close enough when you're driving because you're not necessarily worried about, the more dangerous elements. So we don't want to have anxiety be too low. We really want it to be in a sweet spot. And if we get it too high, then we start seeing people have kind of like anxiety that's more irrational. So they might have really extreme reactions to smaller problems. They might have anxiety inhibit their performance, and it could be something significant like I'm going to go and do a presentation, or it can be I'm just too worried to walk into Target because I'm nervous about being in the parking lot. I'm nervous about driving my car in the parking lot. So that's kind of a mainstream activity that could be inhibited because their anxiety is too high. So we don't want to have anxiety too high. We don't want to have it too low. We want to have it be in the sweet spot. So I don't want people to be scared of the word anxiety. Symptoms that I think people should be aware of, and I'm not going to read all of these because there's just a lot of words here and you can glance through them yourself. I know for me, when I'm anxious, I'm more likely to get a headache. I'm more likely to have like tingling fingers or hands, feel a little dizzy, have to pee a lot. Sometimes I can have trouble sleeping. And as far as the emotional behavioral, probably the top one, and I start this one because it's so common in my clients. The kids that I work with, particularly the teens, is avoidance, is they will, kind of shut down, they get overwhelmed by their schoolwork, so they just don't do any of it. Or they realize they have so many things on their list of things to do in their day that they just tap out. Or they struggle to engage with a peer and manage conflict. So avoidance is definitely a strategy that so many people experience or use when they're experiencing anxiety. A lot of times people can have catastrophic thinking where they're like, oh my goodness, if I don't do well on this math test, I'm going to never get into college, and then I'm going to have to live with my parents forever, and then my parents are going to think I'm a loser. Like whatever it is, they'll kind of spiral into this really negative, and it's irrational thinking, the absolute worst case scenario. A lot of times we see individuals with anxiety be very impatient or irritable or on edge, maybe quick to raise their voice, quick to cry. They can apologize a lot. They can appear really indecisive. I know my daughter, when she gets anxious, she tends to avoid and she tends to get like indecisive, or she second guesses herself. She isn't able just to kind of plow forward to the next step and see that it's going to be okay. She kind of needs that pep talk to get over that hurdle before she moves on. So these are some of the anxieties or some of the symptoms of anxiety. There's some folks out there who just really have something that isn't on this list, and it's just really important to be aware of what's going on with your body, with your mood, with your behavior when you're anxious. Because then you can tune in, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Is there something I can be doing to relieve it? Is there a strategy that I can use right now so that I'm not experiencing it to the same extent or to a high extent? Some ways that anxiety can impact your life. And I noted several categories here. Your physical health, your work life, your relationships, and mental health. Those are the 4 categories that I just wanted to mention today. I think we hear a lot of things in the media about how anxiety can impact our physical health. It lowers our immune system. It can impact our digestive system, blood pressure, heart health, our energy level, all of that. We see our sleep, things like that can be really disrupted with anxiety. But in the clients that I work with and their parents, oftentimes when there's a stressor, parents indicate that they struggle with their work tasks. It might be harder to get their tasks done. They might have a hard time making decisions. They might not feel as confident in their work abilities or their work performance. So it might make them less likely to ask for a raise or, volunteer to be a leader on a project, things like that. With relationships, probably where I see it being most significant is conflict resolution. Just being able to have the stamina and a sense of calm to feel like, okay, I can communicate with my partner, we can work this problem out. But then also that being present and being emotionally responsive. If you're really anxious, it's hard to be in a space where you can be tuned into your partner, really present in the moment, emotionally responsive to their needs while still taking care of your own. And of course, it can impact your sex drive, and we can often retreat to using technology when we're feeling anxious because that's a soothing strategy that so many of us use. And then mental health, anger management, feeling calm, accessing your coping skills. It's really hard to access your coping skills if you're constantly in a state of anxiety, or you have poor sleep, or you're just not feeling sort of good and confident in yourself. or you're having really irrational thoughts that feel scary and overwhelming. Strategies to deal with anxiety. I mean, there's literally dozens of strategies. And when I was putting together this presentation, I sort of had to pick a few things that either spoke to me or I've seen have been really helpful for clients that I've worked with. So the first one's real simple, getting enough sleep. It's really hard to cope with our world when we're fatigued. We get overwrought easier. Small problems can feel like big problems. Our stamina's lower. We might have a harder time prioritizing other healthy behaviors like eating well or exercising. So we are often more impatient. So that is like kind of the first line of defense when I work with kids who are struggling with anxiety is I'm like, let's talk about their sleep, because if they're up all night on technology or they have some sort of sleep disorder, it makes sense that we're more likely to see temper outbursts, irritability, avoidance behavior, helplessness. So that's kind of my big ticket item, like a low-hanging fruit that I like to just tackle first. The second thing is have the members of the family reflect on their social media content. There is so much comparison that happens with social media, and I'm guilty of this myself. We look at other people's life, or we look at, what blessings they have, or the job they have, the money they have. Does it seem like their family gets along? Sometimes I look with envy at other families who have living grandparents because my parents have both passed away. And so if I'm not looking at social media, I don't think of that. I feel very blessed with the family. But there's times when we get on social media and we compare ourselves to others. Or this is also something I'm guilty of, is I'll look at stressful or sad news. And with so much going on with the economy, finances, the election, COVID, just job prospects and stuff, there's a lot of stuff out there that can really put us in a state of stress if we're constantly inundating ourselves with that content. And also, we have this added responsibility of having to look at sources that are meaningful and truthful. And there's so much garbage out there on the internet that at times it can be really hard to figure out, okay, what information or what sources am I getting my information from? Because some of the sources that are the most shady are those that are designed to evoke the strongest emotional reaction in you. So there's times when I see something, a headline that's really provoking or an image that's very upsetting, I have to look at the source and recognize, like, is this valid? Should I be spending even one more second of my time on this? Because it could be contributing to more of like a stress response than is necessary. A lot of times content is focused on beauty or wealth. And there's times, I mentioned this a second ago, that we use it as a self-soothing strategy. And so it can cause us to kind of roll into our online world and step away from some of our real life connections. And that can cause stress if you're not having dinner with your family, if you're not returning calls, if you're not following through with social commitments that we are able to do during COVID. We see that for many of us, stress can rise. And then if you're a parent out there, are you role modeling appropriate technology and social media usage for your family? Because, you all got to work together on it all the time. All right, more strategies to deal with anxiety. We have mindfulness and meditation. And this is that mind and body practice. And most of the time people discuss it as a process of working in that quiet space, having yourself be in a comfortable posture, really focusing your attention on whatever it is. For me, I like to use like a mantra. I'll come up with a statement that feels good and feels accurate and kind of repeat it and get into a space where I just can kind of absorb myself and have like a quiet moment and just sort of settle everything in my body down where I'm, paying attention to my breath. My body's in a relaxed pose. I'm not having a list of what I need to be doing going through my mind or thinking about, what I should be doing as a parent. It's really a time to quiet everything down so I can sort of hit the reset button. And I've learned that it absolutely takes practice to do this effectively. Oftentimes you might try this strategy 1, 2, 5, even 10 times and feel like, gosh, this is just my mind wanders. It's maybe a little boring. I don't know what to say or do. I'm having a hard time getting comfortable. Like, don't really get into a space of sort of stepping away and relaxing. And so I do really encourage those of you out there who haven't mastered this. By master, I mean done it in any way that it feels good, to practice it, continue doing it. And even if you do it for 5 minutes in the morning, before you step in the shower, over time, as we get more practice, we find it to be more effective. So give it a chance. This number 4, choosing activities that result in flow. Now, the word flow is not a word I made up. It is a psychological term, and it basically is that feeling you get when you're so immersed in an activity that like time goes by. Have you ever done something like, I have a friend who's an artist, and he will be working on his artwork, and he will just get so absorbed, and he'll just be concentrating, and he'll just be in this space of like purpose and productivity, and it's almost zen-like for him. And then all of a sudden, 3 hours will have passed, and he'll kind of come out of his zone and sort of have the look of like almost like waking up from a really good nap, where he's just like, he wasn't present in our world for a little while. He was present in his artistic journey. And so it's a very like healthy, productive form of distraction. And the idea is not that you're going to do something like, oh, I had to concentrate so hard to fix the leaky sink, but it's really doing something that gives you a sense of pleasure and competence. I do find that sometimes, like when I've written the books that I've written, that I can kind of get into a space of flow where everything is going perfectly. Time is flying by. I'm not, thinking about, am I cold? Am I hungry? Is this boring? Should I check my phone? It's just a real space of flow. So that's something, if you have an activity that kind of inspires you to be in that state, that can be a good place or a good way to reduce anxiety. Number 5, exercise. Do the exercise that you'll do. I'm not going to be a runner. My brother is. I'm not going to spend a lot of energy learning how to be a runner and trying to force myself to enjoy it. I do like doing high intensity workouts with my daughter. I'm fine with getting on the elliptical and watching a favorite TV show. I'm cool with walking the dog or going for a hike with my family. But the most important thing is to engage in the type of anxiety to engage in the type of exercise that you'll actually follow through on. Because the only thing better than exercise is consistent exercise, is being able to do it in a regular enough schedule where you get the benefits long term. Number 6, practicing self-care. Now we see this term all over the internet. And practice self-care, sleep in, eat some favorite foods, watch your favorite TV show, and let go of some of your responsibilities. But I just am of the mindset that self-care is whatever you need to do to be able to kind of move on to the next part of your day. And if that means taking a good solid nap so that you can wake up refreshed and with a better attitude and some energy, do it. But if it means I'm going to wrap all my Christmas presents at 10 o'clock at night while drinking a glass of wine, and then I'm going to have that much less on my plate for tomorrow, and I'm going to feel good and accomplished, that can be practicing self-care too. So I had a situation, this happens every once in a while. I'll have a client cancel and I'll have a spare hour in my day. And I tend to feel like during working hours, I should be doing work-related tasks. I have a hard time stepping away and just like running that errand or online shopping or reading a favorite book. And on this particular day, I just busted out, folded all the clothes in the laundry room. And it was just something I needed to do. I felt so much more at peace when it was done. I felt a sense of accomplishment. I had a mental break from my workday. And it really was a moment that I initially had to say, no, it's okay to step away from your workday and do this household thing that's kind of nagging at you. And in that moment, I was like, okay, this was a moment of self-care, even though to other people, it may not have looked like that because I was folding laundry. Number 7, make sure you're connecting with others. Most of the time, I would say that we want people to connect with other people. However, I do want to leave room for the fact that for some people, that's not where they get their most satisfaction. Some people, it's connecting with animals, like they ride horses or they have a strong relationship with their pets. Other people, it's about being in nature and getting fresh air. I have a good friend who is just really feels connected to being outdoors, and for sure, like her anxiety is managed by going on these walks through the woods behind her house. She takes her dog, she walks through. I think she might listen to music or maybe not. She just kind of walks through the woods, and every once in a while she'll snap a picture of something interesting, and it just resets her entire day. And she's an introvert. She's the first to admit that, between her work life and her living at home with her family, she's got a lot of nice connections with people, but for her to reduce anxiety, she needs to connect with nature. So I just wanted to mention that it doesn't have to be just about connecting with people. And then the last thing I want to note is just knowing your limits. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you literally have too much on your plate and there's things that you have options, where you can say no, no to helping out for that holiday party, no for doing some home project that maybe you can hire out, whatever it is, no to helping your kid learn, chemistry when there's such thing as a tutor that will do that. Whatever it is, it's okay to say no and know what your boundaries are and know what you're equipped to handle. And just because you can't handle it today doesn't mean you won't be able to handle it a month from now or a year from now. A lot of the women that I work with, and by women I mean teenagers who are very competent or mothers, have what I call the curse of the competent woman. And this is where things kind of come easy. You're generally organized. You normally have your stuff together. People sort of start to rely on you to solve their problems. And what can happen is it can be really difficult to admit when you're struggling with something, when you're overwhelmed. It can be hard to ask for help or be vulnerable. So if you have the curse of the competent woman, step back and recognize that you can get into a dynamic where you're sort of always doing and serving others and sort of raising the ante all the time of what it is that you should be doing. And it's important sometimes to take a breath from that. So we'll talk about that more, I think, because that curse of the competent woman is kind of a bigger principle than we're going to talk about today. When to seek help? If you want to. If you think it's going to be helpful, do it. Maybe you think you might be struggling with anxiety, but you're not really sure. Talk to someone and figure it out if that's, an area for you that you could get some support in. If you feel like you're editing your words because you're afraid that they're going to sound weird or crazy, if you're impatient or irritable much of the time, if it's hard, you're having a hard time enjoying activities that you typically found to be pleasurable because you're feeling anxious or panicked or you feel dread, then that might be a sign that getting some support would be really helpful. And then also keep in mind if you have other risk factors. If you feel like you're using substances in an excessive way, if you have a family history of anxiety or depression, or you have another diagnosis that could be related, such as ADHD or mood disorder, those are things that you might want to recognize could be risk factors and seek out help, whether because you need it and you can feel that you're having symptoms, or you just want to be proactive and make sure that you're staying on a healthy path. So think about that. If there's a way that I can support you, either as a therapist or as a coach, please reach out. Let's see here. Question and answers. Right now, I'm not seeing any question or answers in the section there, which is fine. Here's some resources that I have. Please make sure to join me on Instagram, Facebook. I do like to update things every day where I either note something new that I'm offering listeners, whether it's a podcast episode or a really great article that's come across my way, or just any resource. I like to make sure that that's posted on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group called Adolescents: A Parent's Guide, a support group for high school parents, and that group is filled with very kind, supportive parents who talk about the challenges of raising middle school kids and high school kids. And then of course, come back here every Monday. We are going to take a break that Monday after Christmas. So between Christmas and New Year's, we won't be hosting a webinar on that week, but then we'll be back on that Monday, which is January 4th, I believe. And then two, if you visit drtaraegan.com, you can find out more about services that I offer to support your family. I'm going to talk about this more next week, but we are launching an empowered stepmother group, and it is going to be a very close-knit, small group between 8 and 10 people who are stepmothers who are just experiencing those challenges of blending into a new family. You know, it might be that they're not sure how to contribute in the most effective way. They may be struggling with like feeling like their stepchildren appreciate them, or how to navigate like discipline or managing communication with your partner's ex-wife. So we're going to have a really great group that we're hoping to start by the end of January, and we're just going to start enrolling members now. So I'm going to talk about that more next week, and come with questions if you think you might be a good fit for that group, or if you might have a friend who could be a good fit. And then, as always, here's my contact information. And I've mentioned all of these things before. So I appreciate you all being here today. I hope you're having a safe and happy December and are managing anxiety during this time of COVID and disputed elections and the holiday season. So see you next week. Bye now.